again for being here, and I hope you enjoyed the short introduction that we gave you. We now go ahead for the first roundtable of the day. We try to make it this event this year with two roundtables. I think we had it in the last Horizon 2020 day, and it was very well appreciated from the ecosystem. So we decided to go bigger this year and have two roundtables. The topic of today is the green transition, and in order to reach the climate goals by 2030 and driving European industrial competitiveness agenda in a global world, this twin transition, green and digital, is a necessity. The green transition is key to decarbonize our economy, adopting a circular development model, while also fostering digital data-based economy. We will speak about it today with our panel of experts that I'm really happy that we're able to join us today. I will introduce them to you now. First one, Robert Kerger, conseiller in the Ministry of Higher Education and Research. He's in charge of the coordination of the public research centers, the external evaluations, and links to the OECD. He's also commissaire de gouvernement in the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology and president of the board of directors of the Foundation Restena, which is the national network in cybersecurity for research and education in Luxembourg. Robert, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Stefano, for inviting me.
Second, in this roundtable, Christina Ehlert, chargée de mission to the director of to the ERIN department of the LIST, Environmental Research and Innovation Department. Christina is project manager and advisor to the senior management at the LIST. She has been managing a number of projects including the development of the business plan, the Green Tech Innovation Center, focused on bio-based technologies for the application in various sectors of industry, energy, and agriculture. She was also responsible for the LIST sustainability strategy and is supporting its ongoing implementation. She has a background which is very similar to mine, and I'm really pleased to have a biotech and molecular biologist in this panel, and she has a PhD in plant ecophysiology from Indra Superagro in Montpellier. Thanks, Christina, for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Stefano.
Next, Hakan Lucius. He's the head of corporate sustainability at the EIB, the European Union Bank. He covers sustainability, ESG reporting, and the auditing dimension of the institution. He has more than 25 years of experience in sustainability. He has structured multiple billions of euros of investments through both loans, equities. He's led multinational teams negotiating with governments, corporate, and civil society organizations. He's a member on the board of LuxFlag, the Luxembourg Fund Labeling Agency. He has a pretty impressive CV. We don't have the time to go through all of it. He's also very active from an academic perspective. He's a professor in finance in a number of European institutions and universities. Also the one that I'm currently attending as an EMBA student. It's really a pleasure to meet you also here, Hakan, today.
Thank you, Stefano.
And last but not least, it's very much appropriate as is my boss, Benjamin Questier, Director for R&D and Innovation Support at Lux Innovation, Luxembourg Innovation Agency. He coordinates the effort of the team responsible to support national companies, research institutes, and the university translate their initiatives into projects eligible for funding either on national or European level. Before joining Lux Innovation, he held several positions as project manager and R&D consultant in France, but active all over Europe, supporting renowned organizations like the CNRS, the DLR, TNO, and companies like Philips, Airbus, and Sony. Benjamin is board member of TAFTI, the European Network of Innovation Agencies, and the Luxembourg Convention Bureau. Benjamin, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Stefano, for moderating this day and organizing this day.
So, I would love to hear from you first. If you can start with your contribution, if you can make it in 5 minutes, it would be great. And Mr. Kircher, if I can ask you to start, please.
Thank you, Stefano, and it's really a pleasure to share some reflections with you about this topic from a perspective of the public research policy view. As you might probably all know, since the year 2000, around the year 2000, R&I has become a real priority of the government and of all governments since then. And I only recall the creation of the University of Luxembourg in 2003, the introduction of the multi-annual contracts that are based on trust and allow for predictability. What is very impressive is the 20-fold increase in financial resources since the year 2000. And budgets were even increased during crisis time, be it in the crisis 2007-2008 or the crisis, the COVID crisis. But besides the the first mission of public research, that is to create the knowledge and to broaden the knowledge base of the society, research and development becomes more and more pivotal for the implementation and the development of policies in other areas, since also in other areas, like for instance the climate change, like the digitization, the complexity is increasing, and more knowledge is important to develop and implement those policies. So therefore research and development has become an important ingredient to both technological and non-technological innovation. You might have seen that the Minister Maisch has signed 2 weeks ago the new multi-annual framework contracts for covering the years to 2022 to 2025, engaging the state for more than 1.6 billion euro over the next 4 years. And there are two main pillars of these contracts. One is the scientific excellence. On the one hand side, it is of course demonstrated by the publications, both quantity and quality, but also the thematic aspects. And there I joined the main subject of this roundtable, that is the transition. And I just perhaps give some examples of what is reflecting this transition policy in the contracts of the university, the public research centers, and the FNR. There is these are just examples. There is the creation of a new interdisciplinary center for sustainable development at the University of Luxembourg in the next years to come. There is the innovation platform on hydrogen at the LIST. There is the quantum computing innovation platform at LIST. There is the Clinova project data integration center at the LIH, and there is more new activities in high performance computing, cybersecurity, and also data science at the University of Luxembourg. Another novelty is also the development of a mission-based approach reflected by a common chapter in the work programs of all the institutions, and these missions come is above all a funding instrument, but going beyond the funding instrument, it's also a coordination instrument for a long-term ambition of a collective commitment of public research to nurture and strengthen the economic and social recovery and the country's resilience. The four types of missions have been identified in these in the work programs of the institutions. That is first the digitalization serving personalized medicine, financial technologies of the future, education training skills of the 21st century, and climate and energy challenges. You see the twin transition is very well covered by the missions. In general, it is also important to consider that, or to be aware that Luxembourg is not an island, but a small open economy, depending very much on what is going on outside of Luxembourg. And here we see that a program like Horizon Europe becomes very important. There is the internationalization aspect of public research on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, there is also the competition aspect. So where are we standing from a scientific point of view? And this internationalization aspect and competition aspect is very much important also from a national policy perspective, and therefore in the frame of the new contracts we foresee an increase for this the so-called bonus that is given to reward the successful participation in public research, and this bonus goes up from 18.5 million in the last 4-year contracts to 35 million in the current contract. So nearly a doubling of the bonus, and this should above all reflect the importance of the participation of Luxembourg public research in international programs. Stefano already pointed out in his introductory session that the participation in H2020 was a very huge success story for Luxembourg. We had 16 ERCs, which really translates the high quality of the Luxembourgish public research system, not only at the University of Luxembourg, but also at the LIST, and very recently at LISA. We have a success rate in H2020 that is much higher than in than the EU average, which also reflects the very high quality of the proposals of where was Luxembourgish participation. And as also Stefano already pointed out, we have a threefold increase with regard to FP7 concerning the net EU funding that we got in H2020. So Horizon Europe is an excellent instrument to complement the national instruments, both for the twin transition, but for all other domains. It also very much complements the national strategy, since as for a small country, we cannot afford to be active in everything, and not everything can be a priority, and therefore there are topics that are not covered by the national funding instruments, that is the DFNR, but that can be funded by via the Horizon Europe. So also from this point of view, it is very important to participate in Horizon Europe for capacity building. Let me close with saying that whenever you need help, you can very much count of the very professional services of Lux Innovation. The Ministry of Higher Education and Research appointed Lux Innovation as the national contact points, and the dedicated team of collaborators of Lux Innovation are well networked in these networks, and are always willing to help you to participate. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Robert. Benjamin, thanks very much, Robert. And there are many very interesting points that we will touch later in the discussion. Benjamin, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you.
Vaccination,
Yes.
what our
Thank you, Stefano. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaja, for your trust and the information you just shared. It was interesting to be reminded of the priorities that has been set for research, but also the huge financial support and the growing ecosystem that we are living in. In that sense, I would like to share first maybe a couple of words on Lux Innovation and explain you how we as an organization, we have on our board the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, but we also have the Ministry of Economy, the FEDIL, the Chamber of Crafts, and the Chamber of Commerce. And last year we have been on an exercise to reframe our own strategy and priorities, because we want to ensure that all our activities are aligned with the interests on national level, as it has been explained by the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, but also on European level, right, in order to be able to develop a competitively sustainable and a digital economy. We took into account these challenges for research, but also on our side for companies especially, and these challenges that are ahead of us, especially even more in this pandemic. And therefore we have defined 4 strategic priorities for our agencies. The first one is to help Luxembourg and Luxembourg companies to raise their competitiveness in a digital and sustainable economy through research and innovation. Research and innovation, as it has been explained by Stefano in the first session, is really our mission. So regardless the size and maturity of a company, we can support them to achieve success in business, being innovative, sustainable, develop new products and services. And we believe that every company can become a champion through innovation in his or her field. On a little bit larger screen, our efforts are also oriented towards the global, on national level, economic development through research and innovation. And there we support the government in reaching the twin goals. Not only by supporting companies individually, as I just said before, but also by identifying national challenges or sectorial challenges, generating relevant ideas, or turning them into reality through collaboration with different kinds of stakeholders. So it's a little bit broader activity. We have, as I said, we have 2 more strategic objectives, but those are more internally regarding the evolution of our agencies. So in any case, reaching this transition, as it has been said just before me, is not possible without research done by the university, done by our RTOs, and it's essential for them to collaborate with the companies so that the companies can bring those elements onto the market for society, but also for the companies and the economic development. So at Lux Innovation, we offer a portfolio of products and services that meet these needs for the companies. And therefore, what we can do is, of course, guide the companies to based on their individual needs. So either we will propose direct services from our portfolio, responding on a specific request for companies, but also, for example, on the research side, if you're looking for European funding, or we can carry out a 360-degree analysis. And there, what we are doing is really doing a deep dive in, with your approval, with the approval of the companies, of course, into your strategy, your vision, your bottlenecks, how you want to evolve, where you want to go, etc. And then we develop together with you a roadmap over a couple of years on what are the different services we can deploy and how we could help you. In that, of course, we can give relevant and timely advice on national and European funding. We can also put you in contact with technical and scientific expertise. And we also make sure that we translate your ideas into concrete projects that are eligible for funding and that have the greatest chances of success. Also, as I said, what we also do in Lux Innovation more largely is organize maybe transversal workshops or elements or exchange moments on innovation, on sectorial priorities, being, of course, these that were mentioned on the twin transition. And there we gather expert research scientists, and we try to develop flagship projects, national flagship projects, which should help to develop the economy. More recently, we have regrouped all our digital initiatives under a single department, which is the Digital Transformation Department, which is your main contact point. We have gathered there the Digital Innovation Hub, which is really oriented towards the transition for Industry 4.0. We have put there the High Performance Computer Competence Center, if you have any questions or support needed with regard to HPC activities, and also the Gaia X initiatives, which is the European proposal for the next generation of data infrastructure, data-driven economy. And finally, it's our intention over the next months to set up a sustainability innovation hub within Lux Innovation, and that provides a comprehensive overview of all the sustainability-related in-house expertise that we can offer you and take you forward. So this is to come in the next months. So you see a little bit what are our priorities to help you as a company, as a researcher, and also how we believe we can contribute to the global ecosystem. And these services that I mentioned are not exhaustive. Those are the ones most relevant for the discussion today. But that being said, for example, to be very concrete, let's take an example. You, for example, as a researcher or as an institute or a company, you know what your challenges are, you know how to tackle them, or either, well, you have a problem and you don't really know how. Anyway, in both cases, you can get in touch with us at Lux Innovation and with our experts or the cluster managers. So you have all this contact information on our website. Together with you, we will identify your challenges, and in both cases, we will address them, challenge them, and propose, as I said before, either a tailored roadmap over a couple of years. And that will enable you to undertake more innovation in order to grow and become more resilient and more rapidly be ready for tomorrow's challenges. But of course, we can also have a very specific service. For example, as a researcher or as a company, you're interested in European collaborative R&D or European funding. So you would get in touch with one of the national contact points that you have been presented earlier, a couple of minutes ago. You would expose your idea, you would expose your challenges, your technical bottlenecks, or maybe talking about existing partnerships that you have. And then these people could assess with you the different options that exist in Horizon Europe. We would validate your interests, your capacities. So also for newcomers, people who have no experience in Horizon Europe, it's a good way, it's the best way to start. And then we would define a framework on how this team or a specific person could support you in your endeavor, whether it be, as Stefano said, partner searcher, validation of the approach, of the topic, legal and financial assistance, proposal review, etc., etc. So some of you will say, yes, but I have already quite some experience in the program. Well, let me, on very humble me, nevertheless, please take contact. Please get in touch with the national contact point. They might have some information that you don't have, and it might be in your advantage. And then finally, what happens if there's no opportunity yet in Horizon Europe? Well, there are more options, either on national level, also on European level, and where we could orient to, if it's LIFE, the Innovation Fund, Digital Euro program, or maybe there are even some programs in the European Investment Bank, but then I'm not the best person to talk about it today, so I leave the floor to Mr. Lucius.
Thanks a lot, Benjamin. Hakan, you have been already invited to on stage. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Benjamin. Congratulations to Lux Innovation for this event, and thank you for the invite. Twin transitions, digital and sustainability. I will talk in two steps, one at EU level, one at EIB level, and concretely how it helps companies. Let me first start by saying that the digital transition is extremely important for our competitiveness and thus for our well-being in the future. Sustainability is as well. Both are must-haves for our future. And that's why in the European Union, we're concentrating on both. That's why we have these stars in the background. That's why we have got Horizon Europe. That's why we have the European Green Deal. And I'm proud to be a European because we are leading worldwide in terms of getting carbon neutral, becoming sustainable. We have a clear goal to be net zero carbon by 2050, and we would be the first continent in the world to do so. And we can only do it together because no single nation in Europe is able to do it alone. And that's where our strength comes from. And that's why we have got all these initiatives from the European Union, from bigger to small, which will all cater for our future well-being. That's the only goal that is behind all these initiatives. So if I come to the second part in terms of the European Investment Bank embedding these dimensions and catering for the real economy, I'm very pleased that we have a new sustainability framework, which is now in front of our board to be decided next week, which embeds all these various dimensions that we have into all the operations of the EIB, because all investments have to be sustainable. And they have to bring more to the society than the investment put into it. And that is a very important element and is very work intense to determine, but it is also absolutely essential. So when we talk about sustainability, we don't talk only of 1, 2, or 3 dimensions. We talk of 10 dimensions. We don't only have climate in it, but we have all other aspects, environmental and social, in it as well, ranging from biodiversity to cultural heritage, to occupational health and safety, to labor rights, you name it. A very comprehensive framework, which is for all the investments that we do. And it works in 3 steps. Basically, we first say there are certain things we will never do because we don't think they're good for society. It's a classic exclusion list. In the second step, we have standards, environmental and social standards, a red line which everything has to adhere to. Are you in line with the Paris Agreement? Are you going towards a net zero carbon economy? Do you have no negative impact on biodiversity? What is the situation with employees, with other social dimensions? So all that has to be embedded into every investment. And then comes the third step, and I think that is a very, very important one. Because you might be doing everything very nicely according to standards, but yet is your investment actually bringing back to society more than what you're investing in? And that you can measure, and that you can calculate. And you calculate that sustainability dimension by putting in a shadow price for the benefits and the costs you're doing. So if you're emitting carbon dioxide, you have a shadow price to it. And we put in a very significant shadow price to measure whether that investment is actually having more of a disadvantage than an advantage. Even if the CO2 goes down, does it go down fast enough? how do we measure that? And we put in a price for all those dimensions to figure out whether the investment overall is beneficial to society. And we do this, and this is the important part, for all our investments. So basically, in supporting the real economy, in supporting RDI, in supporting infrastructure, in supporting small and medium-sized enterprises, these dimensions of a climate, social, and environmental due diligence are now being embedded. And with this embedment, anyone who gets those funds from the European Investment Bank or its subsidiary, the European Investment Fund, which is for SMEs, can be assured that the investment is, at the end of the day, beneficial to society, both from a sustainability point of view, and if it's in the realm of digitalization, which is absolutely key for our future, there as well. So it's really about our future, and it's about embedding that, from our point of view, into the investment decision-making process to make sure that what is being put into the economy has a bigger benefit to us all, both green and both digitally, because both are important for our future. Thanks, Stefano.
Thank you so much, Hakan. I will come to you back in a second, but please want to leave Christina also the chance for a 5-minute introduction before going to the question. Christina, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Stefano. Thank you for inviting us as LIST to this round table. I think I take a little bit a complementary position probably and view on Horizon Europe and the twin transition, since we are, as a research and technology organization, I think really on the participant side. So we know the situation as competing for these very prestigious, I would say, funding at European level. And I can resonate to what a lot of you have been saying about complementarity to the FNR that we see in Horizon Europe. So maybe shortly, as Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, of course, we think we have a strong contributing role to the objectives of the Green Deal. And this because, well, we work directly with companies and also public organizations in Luxembourg to realize and to allow them to reach also for Luxembourg the objectives of the Green Deal. So I can give a number of examples where I think really we have a contributing role, like reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So the very ambitious Fit for 55 ambitions of the European Commission, that also in Luxembourg, well, we will have a long way to go, and where LIST is really also through European projects investing in cleaner energy technologies and sustainable, let's say, energy systems. So where we know that more and more renewables will deliver electricity, and where we'll have to balance supply and demand. So it's not only about production of renewables, but it's really about also long-term management to ensure security of electricity grids. Then another pillar for us where we have strong contribution is, of course, on the safety and sustainability of products, where since long standing we participate through Horizon 2020, even the former framework programs, and now we will through Horizon Europe participate to make sure that new products and technologies are more sustainable and safer for the end users and also all stakeholders along the supply chain and the value chain. And we have the digital pillar now coming very, very prominently through Horizon Europe. So digitalization, we see it, yes, as an opportunity, and we also see it as, it was mentioned before, as something where we have to be careful and where we have to look at the sustainability impacts that can be realized through digital technologies on the positive but also on the negative side. So we also think that sustainability is really everywhere. We can see it in Horizon in the Horizon Europe program, and we also have the competences to address them in a qualitative and quantitative way. So we have been over the last 3 years, I just checked before coming also to this session, I just checked our figures. So yes, the success rate in Luxembourg is very high. LIST aligns roughly to this success rate. So we have acquired more than 30 Horizon Europe projects over the last 3 years. I think we have a few ingredients to that. So we have the strong scientific excellence, let's say, in a number of domains, just for those that do not know LIST so well. So we have the environmental research innovation department, we have materials research and technologies, we have the IT department that is working on innovation services, and we have relatively recent we are hosting also the European Space Resource Innovation Center, ESRIC, at LIST. And so that is really, I would say, our thematic expertise. Then, as we see that the sustainability dimension is becoming more and more important, and also Horizon Europe is really putting targets for technology and innovation development to ensure that results and outcomes are more sustainable than, let's say, the benchmark, the as is, or the as this scenario, I would say. So for that, we can rely on a number of transversal experts in sustainability assessment, in safety, in regulatory. So those should allow us also to, of course, to ensure that these outcomes are more sustainable. And thirdly, of our, let's say, ingredients and of our success factors, I would say, is the networks. We realize more and more the competitiveness in Horizon Europe is very, very high. So competition is high, and we need to rely on a network of partners. That is something very important, that we build this network, not only to be visible, but to be successful in the end. And yeah, on a practical side, we are also involved in the Digital Innovation Hub as a strong partner with Lux Innovation. So the digital component, we want to really build on it. I think many of you have heard about our digital twin initiatives, and we will deploy this more and more also in Luxembourg, but also we need to rely on Horizon Europe. And I'm happy to discuss today what all I think we in Luxembourg, we can do together to bring on those on board that are not so familiar with Horizon Europe and can also strongly benefit from it. Because I think each of us in Luxembourg, not only as a professional, but also as a citizen, can benefit from Luxembourg being a strong participant to Horizon Europe programs. It seems far away for many companies, in particular the smaller ones, and I think we need to be very pragmatic and very close to all different actors on that side, the municipalities, the cities, and NGOs and companies, of course. And I'm happy to discuss what we can do together towards this, to strengthen our participation for the benefit, let's say, of the Luxembourgish society.
Thanks a lot, Christina. Hakan, may I come with a question to you? You mentioned carbon price. Can you give us some more detail? Can you explain it a bit more in detail what it means in practice when it comes to the...
Thank you, Stefano. The challenge we have is that we are unsustainable without really paying for it. It's not part of the market we're in. You can emit, if you want to say, CO2, which has a negative effect on everyone, but you don't pay for it. An economist would call this an externality, basically something which is not in the market. So the question is, how do I integrate this externality into my decision-making as a company or as an investor? And there are companies which are doing it, and there are investors which are doing it, which are saying, okay, I'm not paying for these external effects, but what if I were to do it? And that immediately begs the question, well, how much, right? Even if it's a shadow price, how much? And when it comes to climate, greenhouse gases are paramount, and the greenhouse gases emitted tomorrow are worse than the greenhouse gases emitted today. So what we have done is we have said, let us determine the level of price that needed to be paid for us to become net zero carbon by 2050. And we have publicly announced what we think would have been that price, and it's quite significant. Actually, to give the figures, we are saying an emission today should be shadow priced at 80 euros per ton of CO2 equivalent. And this goes up year by year to 800 euros per ton of CO2 equivalent in the year 2050. And if you have a long-term investment and you have that long-term horizon and you have that long-term projection and you discount it to today, you immediately see the impact, and suddenly certain investments, which financially may be very sensible from a sustainability point of view, become unacceptable, and we reject them. So that's really the impact of a shadow price. And it's not only for carbon. I mean, I've given this example for carbon, but all the other externalities, to the extent possible, are integrated into our methodology.
Thanks so much. Very much clearer. Mr. Kescher, you mentioned the establishment of the university, the resources allocated to the public research sector that you've been recently signing. How important is really, in your opinion, the balance between these resources and the competitive funding instead? And also related to this, how do you see, because we have been doing very well in Horizon 2020, how can we work together in order to be sure that we don't reach a plateau and that we can continue to do better and better? How can the method support this?
Thank you, Stefano, for the questions. I'm happy to respond to it. So the third-party financing is very important in our national public research policy, be it, as you mentioned, the competitive funding that is more reflecting the science base. So where are we, how excellent is our science? And on the other hand, the so-called collaborative or contractual research, where a third party shows an interest in what is done. So, and therefore both aspects are very important. You have on the one hand side the science base, the quality of science reflected by the competitive funding, where mainly bottom-up projects are funding, or where the researcher mainly defines the project. And on the other hand side, you have the collaborative or contractual research, where the research is defined together with a user, be it a company or a public administration. How can we make this sustainable? Well, one of the bases to have to assure, or to it's not really assurance, but one of the conditions for being sustainable in getting more and more, or in not reaching a plateau or even decreasing, is you have to have a solid base funding, a block grant that gives you the opportunity to develop in-house the competences, and then to go out for reaching the competences you have developed in house, to measure them be it on the national level with the FNR instruments or the European with the Horizon Europe funding. But it's not only the purely scientific base. We have also to bother about the impact of the research, and therefore the collaborative funding is very important, and also more applied parts of, for instance, Horizon Europe. But I would say one of the recipes for success in Horizon Europe is really to have a solid basic funding and a real push for diversifying the funding sources.
Thank you so much. Christina, a question for you, but of course, then it's open to everyone. Feel free to jump in whenever you want. Question is, how an RTO, how public research in general, can support this from your side? From your side, how, what practical initiatives you can have to attract new stakeholders, to be yourself a sort of driver in the ecosystem?
Yes, that is for us a key point. That, as I mentioned in the beginning, also for us, well, relying on a strong network that we have outside Luxembourg, so partners that have experience also in Horizon Europe, that with which we build so-called core teams, let's say building consortia, discussing ideas initially, and then making the channel to the Luxembourgish or regional stakeholders is very important. My colleagues constantly are in contact with organizations here in Luxembourg, companies, to discuss, well, could we have a pilot or a case study in Luxembourg to bring the technologies, that the innovation outputs that are developed with the consortium in Horizon Europe, to bring them also to Luxembourg and test them in, let's say, real field conditions, and get the feedback, bring it back to the consortium, and bring the technology further, test it, deploy it, and enhance its uptake. So working with the stakeholders in Luxembourg, yes, it's something where we have tried already to engage new stakeholders that we think have a real role to play in Horizon Europe, and that should also benefit from it, which are, let's say, the municipalities, the cities, and besides, of course, the companies, where recently we organized a workshop to understand, well, better how can we collaborate, and I think we need to build on that further. We need to make Horizon Europe really understandable to all organizations in Luxembourg, and I really mean all. So the private sector, of course, because a lot of funding, a lot of means will become available for the sustainability transition of companies as well. So we should really make the most out of it. But also then to those that are less, let's say, less known, less that may have reservations on the administrative burdens, that may be also not so sure about the success rate, I would say, to invest upfront. So we need to accompany that. We need to understand which calls they could be interested in, and then make the bridge with our larger networks. And I think that is something we need to do more closely to those stakeholders.
Thanks. Benjamin, related to this, my question is, we hear a lot about this green transition. How do you see that happening in practice? Can it happen is it happening in parallel? Two lines that never touch each other. Are they intertwined instead? And what also the role of an innovation agency in facilitating, for instance, this intertwining?
Thank you for the question. Can it happen in parallel? Can it happen at the same time in the same institution? Well, Everything depends then, of course, on the capacity of the company. I will orient my response more towards companies, right? Or institutions, but they can happen at the same time, depending on the capacities that you would have on human resources and then finances and how much time you can spend on it. One thing for sure is that the digitalization can be in itself an acceleration to be more sustainable or energy efficient. So I think it's always interesting to tackle the question at the same time and then to set priorities on how to go forward. And that's something maybe our experts can help you to do, and then to define what would be the best ways to get that on the road or get progress in it. It's not only about funding, right? It's also about finding the correct experts, finding the expertise at the least, or at the university, or at other research institutes, right? Or to extend also the collaboration patterns elsewhere in Europe. You can also benchmark. I mean, there are some companies maybe who are more advanced, or some institutes, and that's every point where we would like to help, and that's about it for me.
Thank you very much. I'm really sorry, we are running a bit late. So if you are okay with that, I will ask you for, closing remark, a closing message that you want to give to everyone who's listening to us today. And are you all okay with that? And Christina, you are nodding. So I ask you to go first. Then.
I made myself the first one to go for this round. Well, thank you very much for organizing this panel session. I think we could give an overview, let's say, where the different actors stand today. And my closing remark is really to everyone, our doors are open. So if you're interested in Horizon Europe, as for Lux Innovation, we are there to discuss your needs, to guide you also through the calls. We have specific interest. We are more than happy to bring you on board and to make Luxembourgish contributions, let's say, in consortium more solid, and to bring also the benefits from our work and our collaborations with outside Luxembourg to Luxembourgish companies and organizations. So that is my my remark for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I can, I will just jump in so we don't. I would also like to thank you and also the audience for being here this morning. We've tackled the topic on different levels, and I would like just to remind some words. As Mr. Kerger said it earlier, research is a main ingredient for innovation, and it's innovation that will help us grow and be resilient and go forward. And there are huge challenges before us, and as Mr. Lucius said, I mean, we need companies and institutes needs to start to take into account the price of carbon, for example, and we're talking about $80 or euros a ton, but if you're going up to 800, I mean, if you manage a business, you know what that means. And so if we need to tackle that, there are different means, and research is the main one, and expertise like they have at the LIST or at other institutes in Luxembourg, they can help you to bring that forward. And if you want to discuss that more in detail, well, we're here to help you, and we'd be glad to discuss with you about it.
Hakan, if you want to go next.
Thank you, Stefano. Digitalization and sustainability are our future. There's no way around it. And to achieve it, we will need innovation, for sure. So I think we all together here in this panel are here to help master this challenge together. Thank you.
Thanks. And Mr. Kerger, I'll leave you to close.
Yeah. So can only encourage everyone to participate in the Horizon Europe program. It might be very difficult for newcomers, but we have established collaborations and participations, be it on the public sector or the private sector, and it's really a win-win. We can show to Europe what is possible in Luxembourg, and we can look for a competence that we need, and we will find them at the European level.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that it may be difficult for newcomers. We will have this afternoon a session dedicated for those of you who are not yet familiar with Horizon programs. Thank you all the speakers of this roundtable for participating, and I thank you all for attending to this session. We will now have a short break. We are running a bit late, but luckily we try to have an agenda which is finishing quite before lunch, so we are not running into your lunch programs. Please, I think you will be moved automatically, or feel free to choose the next session once you have your coffee mug filled. And thanks again, and it's been really a pleasure for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.